Hey everyone, Brian from Witch Doctor here, continuing with the tuner testing that I have been doing lately. Specifically, continuing the tuner testing here with this Eddie Harris tuner on a light varmint barrel chambered in 6 ppc by Speedy Gonzalez. Barrel donated by Bart Souter. Again, appreciate all your contributions, especially people on my Patreon page helping me out to make sure I can do these tests with a high degree of rigor, a lot of bullets down range so that the statistics are able to detect any effect that these tuners may be having. Already did a tuner test with this tuner, the Dan Bramley DSB fabrication tuner, and found some pretty significant results in terms of its ability to compensate for dramatic shifts in barometric pressure. And I went ahead and continued testing on the Harris tuner in that sort of manner. I was looking to see, can the Harris tuner do the same thing here that the DSB tuner did? All right, so I continued the testing with this Eddie Harris tuner. I followed the same pattern in terms of methodology for tuner testing with the DSB tuner. Again, threw the tuner on, turned it in all the way in, clamped it down, and went ahead and started load development. Already kind of knew, kind of had a good ballpark estimate of where the load was going to land using the known load method. And these Joker bullets shoot really good. These are PRP bullets, hand swaged, bench rest match grade bullets. Typically, what I find with those, even with the short 790 jacket and the longer 825, is about 2 thousandths off the lands tends to be a really good seating depth for them. And no surprise, when I did load development with this one, the 6 ppc here with the Jokers, 2 thousandths off the lands was the sweet spot. So went ahead and shot it in match conditions, won the match, and determined this load is really good. Went ahead and shot the sine wave test and found a nice flat spot in between setting 8, 1, and 2. Set it on setting 1, shot several 5-shot groups, and it shot really small, shot in the high 1s, low 2s. And then went ahead and found a day where and I did all that in high barometric pressure. Anything usually above 29.7, 29.8 is what I consider on the higher end of barometric pressure here. Anything below 29.8, 29.7 is getting on the low side. And there was a day where we had low barometric pressure. Temperature and humidity were very similar to the shooting conditions that I did the initial tuning and final tuning and match shooting with this, but the barometric pressure was notably lower. It was 29.66 and dropping. And so I went ahead and started testing there. I put it on tuner setting 1, which is the one that shot really small in the high barometric pressure conditions, and all of a sudden I start getting quite a bit of vertical. And I end up turning the tuner inward to tuner setting 2, and the vertical shrunk. Turn the tuner to 8 outward on the other side of number 1, and it shot small. Went back to tuner setting 1, and the same kind of vertical as the first 5-shot group showed up on target. Turned it back to 8, and the vertical shrunk a little bit from a 0.311, 0.301, so low 3s into the mid 2s. But I was interested to see if, what's the difference between tuner setting 1 and 2, because in the Dan Bramley tuner here, I turned it in 1, and that compensated for the low barometric pressure condition. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to turn it in 1/8 of a turn on this Eddie Harris tuner, and just start shooting between that and setting 1. And I ended up doing that, turning on tuner setting 2, shot a couple small groups, another small group, turn it back to 1, and you see the vertical pops back up again. Kept it on 1 and shot a good small group. Not much vertical there. Number 1 here got kind of a all over the place kind of pattern, a little bit of horizontal, a little bit of vertical. Shot number 1 again, and this time I had one that went really low. I thought, well, it's kind of consistent with the vertical pattern that I'm seeing here on setting 1, and turned it back to 2, and it shrunk the groups again. Again, the vertical just disappeared again. And then on my last set of targets, at this point, having to turn this tuner, you have to loosen 2 bolts, and going up there, loosening the bolts, retightening them, I was okay with that for a while, but as I went on, I was like, what, I'm just going to clamp it down at 1 and shoot 4 or 5 shot groups at 1. And I did that, and you can see I was in the 3s, shot one small one, a high 1 here, and then I just went over, loosened it, turned it to setting 2, again 1/8 of an inch turn inward, locked it down, and shot 4 more groups. And you can see I got some small ones here. I did get 1 in the 3s, but got a 0, got a high 1, a low 2. Anyway, so after looking at all the targets, I went ahead and added them to my database. As you all know, I definitely apply statistical tests to my tests. This way I can know, is my finding, as a result of chance, it was just a fluke kind of thing, or is there a high probability that there was an effect here going on? So I entered the data into the database. Tuner setting 1 was sort of my baseline. That's what shot really well in high barometric pressure. By the way, the barometric pressure did drop to 29.64 while I was shooting. So again, I mentioned earlier it was 29.66 when I started, but it was dropping, and it continued to drop throughout most of that day. And I entered all the baseline group statistics, and then entered tuner setting 2 data. And I ran the t-test on it. The aggregate for tuner setting 1 was 0.3179. The aggregate for tuner setting 2 was 0.17. So tuner setting 2 definitely showed the best tune at that point. And it looks like, once again, turning it in a hash mark, which on the Dan Bramley tuner is 2.5 millimeters. On this Harris tuner, it's a lot larger. It's like, I don't know, almost a half an inch or so, an eighth of a turn for the whole diameter, basically. And what ended up happening was it compensated. It went in there, was shooting great in high pressure conditions, and then I took it in low pressure conditions and turned it, and then bam, it regained tune. The statistical probability that it was just a fluke chance thing was extremely low, well below the 0.05 industry standard. It was, let's see, 0.0006959, so extremely low. So I basically was able to demonstrate a statistically significant difference between tuner setting 1, which was great in high pressure, and turning the tuner in low pressure conditions and then having the tune regained. Okay, now group shape. So in terms of actual group diameter and measuring center to center, obviously the tuner setting 2 regained tune and had a much smaller aggregate than tuner setting 1, which was really good in high pressure but awful in low pressure. And tuner setting 2 was phenomenal in low pressure. Tuner setting 1 awful in low pressure. But anyway, so I looked at group shape also, because this was also another analysis that I did. The expert tuners that I consulted with made sure that, hey, make sure you look at group shape too. That's something that has been a pretty significant factor in their testing. And what I found was tuner setting 1, 60% of the groups had vertical. And for tuner setting 2, 0 had vertical. tuner setting 1, only 20% were circular, and tuner setting 2, 89% were circular. So that was another statistically significant finding that I found, was that when you turn the tuner to compensate for the dramatic shift in barometric pressure, not only are your groups a lot smaller, way statistically significantly smaller, but also your group shapes are statistically significantly more likely to be circular. Anyway, so I thought that was interesting too. It was not just the group size, it was also the group shape that was statistically significant. Okay, so in summary, it is just quite honestly striking to me how significant these two tuners have performed in the tuner tests. This one has done wonderful in this long, thick contoured, 1.25 inch thick, straight contoured barrel, where it's, the tuner sits flush here, has really small hash marks. And then this tuner has, combination of like metal and rubber, and utilizes, these bolts to clamp it down, does not sit flush with the crown, and is used on this light varmint contoured short barrel. And both of them had just about identical characteristics. I used the same method where I threw them on, twisted them all the way on, did load development, took them to the match to verify load development, did really well, and then shot the sine wave test, set the tuner in the middle of that flat area of the sine wave, shot several groups there, and they shot small. And then doing all of that in high pressure conditions, and then all of a sudden a low pressure condition runs in, and again for both these tuners it was the same sort of thing. And then I go out and I shoot in low pressure, and it turns out that setting that was great in high pressure is no longer any good in low pressure. And then I turn the tuner inward. In the example of this tuner, 1 hash. In the example of this tuner, 1/8 of a turn. And then all of a sudden I regain tune, and I shoot, several 5-shot groups. I think for this test alone I shot 105 rounds, not even counting like Fowlers, and I think I had to do a couple sighters too to get the groups to go below the center dot line that I was aiming at. But anyway, so yeah, hundreds of shots fired at this point, statistically significant results. It seems to me that the major impact for the tuner is being able to tune in various atmospheric conditions. In my particular case, I haven't had much variability in temperature and humidity right now, more so in barometric pressure I have. But my plan is, again, to continue shooting these two tuners in high temperature variations and high humidity variations, and seeing what happens with temperature and humidity. I already know what happens in, shifts in barometric pressure. That is like pretty darn obvious to me, but it will be interesting to see, as spring develops and summer comes along, how those different wider variabilities in temperature and humidity are going to impact the tuning, and whether the tuner can compensate under those conditions. So we're just going to go ahead and keep shooting and see what happens. Thanks again to PRP Bullets. They have donated at this point 1,000 bullets for this particular rifle. The Voodoo bullet is doing phenomenally well. This one just so happens to like the 115 grain Voodoo bullet the best, and PRP Bullets has been extremely generous in making donations for this testing. So we'll go ahead and just start, continue to shoot throughout the spring and summer there. In this barrel, this barrel loves the Joker, the short one, the 790 jacket. This is again another PRP bullet, and looks like I have most of this 500 count box still going. So we're just going to go ahead and continue running testing with this bullet and see what happens. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, please visit my Patreon. your contributions there are very much appreciated, very much needed. I get a lot of donations, which is wonderful, but there's a lot more expense to all of this testing that you may not see on these videos, but definitely your financial support helps a lot. All right, everyone, take care. Shoot small.